You're listening to the Gab Street Podcast, Columbus, Ohio's #1 podcast for underground talent. Every week we have new conversations with interesting individuals who contribute to the Columbus economy and its lively culture. You may find just what you're looking for right in your backyard. Let's get right into it. Welcome back to another edition of the Gab Street Podcast, airing every Wednesday morning at 6 a.m. Today's a little different. You can't see either of us. It still is an interview. It's not just me. You're probably seeing some panning shots of Columbus right now. But we are in quarantine mode. We are currently generating some Quarantainment. It's going to be a little different. This is completely remote. We are doing this from, I don't know how far away Jared is right now, but probably a few miles away. And I think that's pretty revolutionary. So, come on this adventure with us as we delve into the remote interview realm here. I got a couple things. I got just one thing to address before we begin today. I want to shout out Anthony Cardosi, also known as Boggin on Instagram. He gave us, he was a patron on our Patreon. He was the second one ever. Did a one-time payment of $50, and that's wonderful. We appreciate the support. And he's also part of Revolter Pictures, if you didn't know that. So go check those guys out if you haven't already. Let's get right into it. I have a guest with us today. His name is Jared Acker. He's a filmmaker from Columbus, Ohio. Say hello. How you doing?
How's it going, buddy?
We're getting through this together. We're gonna be all right. Gab Street is still gonna happen. We're still gonna have dope interviews. We're gonna make sure people are understanding what's culturally relevant in Columbus. It's gonna be very cool.
I love it. This is great. Quarantainment at its finest.
Oh yes, of course. It does not get better than this, folks.
Yeah.
You are in for a treat. So, Jared, you are a filmmaker. That is correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
Who do you work with primarily? I know you have a group called Waves of Earth Films.
Yeah. So, Waves of Earth. It's it's mainly me, and then anybody that is down to make some films. Really, I have a couple reoccurring people that come around anytime that there's like a film competition, which is super exciting. I love these guys. And they'll typically, I'll call them up when a competition comes around too. But mainly, if it's just some small projects, it's mainly just me. But I've done some business work, some promotional videos, and things. Danny Max, I don't know if you met him, but he's a great dude. He's one of my best friends.
I don't think so, but that's cool.
Yeah. And when I say one of my best friends, I mean he is my best friend. We've been best friends since we were 8 years old, so and still kicking. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
You guys did two on the YouTube channel that you guys have up. You guys did two competitions, which is a 48-hour film competition and 3 weeks of terror. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we've actually done 2 48-hour film competitions and then 3 weeks. And before that, I was actually any job fits the bill kind of guy for a different team back in 2017. It was my first introduction to any film competitions, and that was a 48. And the leader of that group, his name was Ian McHugh, who's also another incredible filmmaker. He kind of jumps around. He was in LA for a little bit. Now he's back in Columbus, and I think he's moving out to Pittsburgh here pretty soon. But so it was him back in 2017, and then 2018 was the first time I led a team for the 48, and I've been doing that ever since. And then this past year, back in 2019, was my first time doing. We did 3 weeks of terror, and then this year we did the first time we ever did winter film.
Nice.
Which is sweet. It was a good time.
Very cool. How does winter film go? Well, first of all, let's run through all of the different film competitions, because some of our audience are not familiar with these things that happen around Columbus, and they're actually happening all the time, and they have pretty high stakes stuff going on. They have, like in the 48, they give you, I think I'm forgetting, they give you like a character, a prop, and a genre, right?
Yeah, the 48 is probably the most rigorous out of the required elements. So you have a prop, you have a line of dialogue, and you have a character, and the character, they have to be named. So they give you a name, and you have to mention the name, and then that character has to have some occupation, and whether it's mentioned or whether you see them performing that occupation, it has to be there. So that's probably the most rigorous, and you have 48 hours to write, shoot, edit, and deliver this. I think it's anywhere between, oh gosh, like a 6 to 8 minute long film. I could be totally wrong, or I think it might be like 4 to 8 minute long film. But yeah, you have 48. It's a weekend, so Friday night I think it starts at 8 o'clock, and then it has to be delivered on Sunday night at 8 o'clock. So
That's crazy.
yeah,
And a lot of people
yeah,
don't realize the intense amount of work that actually goes into filmmaking. They can just watch the end product, and it takes them a fraction of the time it took to make it. Go into some of the, if you would, some of the biggest challenges that you encounter in that process.
oh my gosh, yeah. For me personally, it's always writing. It's always trying to come up with a good script, because that's, if you don't have a good story, then everything else could be thrown out the window. It doesn't matter if you have an amazing camera, lighting, anything like that, amazing actors. If you don't have a good script, then you got nothing to share, really. You're telling a story. So that's always been the biggest struggle for me. The year that we did, the first year that I led a team, back in 2000, what's that, 18? That was the year that we did Imperium, and we had someone dedicated just for writing, and that was fantastic.
Nice.
I've never had a writer since then, but I'm always open to having a writer. So if you know of any writers who'd like to get a hold of me, send them my way. So
I'll make sure they hear this episode.
Yes, please. So yeah, writing has always been a struggle for me, but if you don't have a good script, the most challenging 48 that we did was this past year when we did Redux, because we got ourselves an Airbnb to film in, and it was right on the border of West Virginia, so it was almost a 2 hour from there. And we had to write the script within that 2 hour window of driving. And so, I mean, we did it. And by the time we got down there, we could just start filming. We had split up the team into two groups. And the first group went down with all of the gear, while the second group stayed back at the kickoff event to get the required elements. And by the time we got down there to our location, the first group who had gotten there set up all the lights and the camera and all that gear, and we had the script ready, so we could just jump in and start filming. So that was probably the most intense moment in any of these film competitions that I've done.
That's a lot of coordination that you have to do.
It was quite a few logistical problems that we ran into, but it worked out pretty well.
And it was all worth it, because that French press coffee looked amazing.
Yeah.
As I was watching, I was like, oh, I want that right now.
We had a guy dedicated just to make coffee. His name's Tyler Schultz. Yes, and we're all about sharing local businesses. So he works at a coffee shop in Hilliard called Coffee Connections.
I think I've heard of it. Nice.
Yeah, he makes amazing coffee. He's also a photographer, so get down there and show him some love. After this quarantine, of course.
Yes, after we get out of this quarantainment zone.
Yes.
I actually, fun fact for Gab Street listeners, I'm actually on a tolerance break from coffee right now. So if you hear the sleep in my voice, that's probably why. But, I just wanted to make the coffee work again, you know what I mean? So it's been about, I think it's been 2 weeks now, actually. So I could probably go back on it now. But anyway, Go support
There
your
you
local
go.
coffee shops. You said it was called
Yes.
Coffee Connections. All the local
Yes.
coffee shops in Columbus I have had good experiences with. So go check them out for sure.
Absolutely.
So also with Redux, it's I was watching that, and I was getting a little I was getting some signs of familiarity,
Yes.
as I've also watched all of Black Mirror as well. And I
Yes.
was going to ask
Yes.
if it was inspired by any Black Mirror episodes.
um, yes. Yeah. So, yes, of course. When so that year we had the required character was a detective, and we also had our required element, or our required genre was sci-fi. So the first year that we did our 48, which was Imperium, it was also like an interrogation scene. And then I just really love doing interrogation scenes. I think if you can create heavy tension with just two people alone in a room exchanging dialogue, that's the epitome of a perfect scene for me. So um, yeah, I wanted to sort of recreate that. I love interrogation scenes, and we got sci-fi, and we had a detective, and so you had this detective trying to get some sort of information from someone in an interrogation, and then we had sci-fi, and you put that all together, and of course, going to draw some parallels to Black Mirror, and a lot of people pointed that out to me as soon as I posted it. They were like, "Oh, you're ripping off a Black Mirror," but I what are you gonna do? I mean, I thought it turned out really well. We enjoyed making it, and of course, in the 2 hours that we had writing it on our way down, that was just what kind of came to mind. We had interrogation scene. It was sci-fi. We had the detective character, and of course, it's going to end up looking like something that we've all seen before.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that you achieved your goal with what you put together. It was definitely, I could feel the suspense on my end of things. So,
Yeah.
and I would not say it as a ripoff. I would say it may have been inspired, maybe subliminally, but I think that it was different enough that it's its own idea. So all those
Yeah.
haters can screw right off. Um, but yeah, great job to you and your team on that.
Thank you.
It looks great, and having taken only 48 hours to do all that, that's impressive.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you, man. That was also the first year that we got to use the new camera. We got a Blackmagic Pocket 4K, which
Nice.
is um, kind of higher up on the consumer level. It's funny if you're a part of any Facebook groups about filmmaking, the Blackmagic sort of lower end consumer price cameras get get made fun of quite a bit because they're definitely no ARRI or Red, but they do a really great job, and we were really surprised at how well Redux turned out.
Yeah, no, the visuals are stunning actually, and that was a great B&B location, or yeah, Airbnb location as well.
Yeah, yeah, and we had a great dude on camera. He was running the camera that time, and his name is Michael Arica. He's also a filmmaker and photographer. He's mainly photography, but he does a lot of really great work. Shout out to him. So,
Very cool.
yeah.
So let's get a little more focused on Columbus itself, as that is the focus of the show as well. I wanted to ask you, as someone on the inside of the film scene, from someone that is not, what are your views on specifically Columbus's film scene? Do you see it as welcoming or hostile and competitive?
Yeah. I'm I'm discovering more and more almost every day. I mean, it was just a couple years ago that I even found out that Columbus did film competitions. I'd look at the big ones. I'd be like, oh, Sundance and Cannes and South by Southwest, even South by Southwest. So I would, it was a big grandiose thing that I almost felt like it was almost unattainable to even get there. But so I didn't even know that Columbus even had its own film scene until a couple years ago, and since then, it's been pretty amazing. I really love everyone who's in the film scene. It has been really welcoming. A lot of people have been, really down to collaborate with each other, which is sweet. Um, and yeah, I guess I'd say that's been my experience so far.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've only heard good things, but sometimes people like to make things out to be better than they actually are. So that's good that everybody's willing to work with each other and be kind to each other. And part of that is also Sam Rothstein and Danny Rogers' Visioneer Spotlight, which is currently canceled for the time being, but when it comes back, y'all should definitely come back to it. I know if you listen to the show, you've definitely heard us mention it before, but community events like that really go to show how much of a cohesive community we actually do have here of film directors. So basically what that event is, the first half or so is a film podcast. So last time it happened, we watched Whiplash, and they did commentary over that for about an hour and a half. And then for 2 hours after that, it is a showcase of local film directors who submit in and get accepted to show their stuff. So basically it's 6 or 7 people present each time, and then people ask questions in between. It's pretty cool. I've met a lot of cool people there. I'm speaking to one of them right now. And, it's just generally a good vibe. It's BYOB too, so, if we're watching a really bad one, you don't have to suffer through it without alcohol. So, so it works out for everybody. This was the last one that they did before everything started getting shut down was the first one that I had been to, and it was the first time I ever met Sam as well. So like I said, I'm learning more and more about how big the Columbus film scene is, just in general, and it's super cool. I mean, I love meeting all kinds of people who are essentially doing the same thing, but with their own style and their own take on it. So I love it, dude. Yeah, it's really cool to see all the diverse level of skill and different ideas that people have in their videos.
Yeah.
So I have a few other questions for you. This one's kind of a hard question. I ask it of most of our guests. What makes you a unique filmmaker in Columbus?
So I don't know. I like, there's a part of me that likes doing this kind of stuff on my own. But to say that makes me unique, I feel like a lot of people do this kind of stuff on their own, which is, I feel like that's almost pretty typical, especially at the local level. I just really like doing this kind of stuff, learning things on my own. I like being sort of a jack of all trades kind of thing. So I don't know if that makes me unique, but I really enjoy learning, how to do any kind of special effects or do any kind of sound design. When I have any spare time on my own, I'll try to get my hands on some new software just to learn it. I've never done, any sort of 3D rendering before, but Blender is free, so I got it just to learn how to use it and then maybe incorporate it into some of my film projects. So, I'm very about learning how to do things that I could just kind of throw into any video, and maybe if it turns into, could put into a project that demands more time, then I'll use it. So Yeah. If that does that make me unique?
I would say that does make you unique because there are a lot of people who will do a creative project and will get very set in their ways once they've found a method that works for them to a certain extent. And I
Yeah.
think it's important to still have an open mind. I would say the unique part of that is having an open mind to learning more things. And I think that's essentially what makes someone successful in any field is the willingness to adopt more and more things into their tool belt, if that makes sense.
Mm,
So I agree
yeah,
with you on that. I think that's very important. That's cool.
for sure.
What's something about the process of filmmaking that's underappreciated by the general public?
Oh man. Um,
So much, right?
yeah, right. I mean, I would say, give your editors some love, you
Yeah.
whenever you can. Editing is where so much of the actual, I mean, that's where the end product comes from is that export button. Um, so yeah, I would say not a lot of people think about how much time goes into sitting down and editing along with that, I mentioned sound design, but getting the right sounds for things is so, yeah, I'm just not thought of very much when it comes to making films. I mean, not a lot of people think, if you go back and you see some of these old movies that they used a bunch of different sounds to, combined just to make one sound. Um, like George Lucas used it, what was it, an elephant? Um, the elephant sound along with hitting a big wire from a radio tower and made that into the TIE fighter sound or something crazy like
Jeez,
that. Yeah,
that's cool.
yeah, just stuff that you don't think about. Sound design and editing, I feel like are two of the biggest areas of filmmaking that not a lot of people, sit back and after the movie's done and think, man, that was a cool sound.
Just like the dog in the
Just
background.
like yeah, it's just like my dog in the background.
I'm actually rendering something as we speak, and I've been trying to get this done for a few days now, but it takes. So the first time it rendered it completely, it took 20 hours to
Oh
render,
my gosh, what in the world?
and it's an hour long. So I'm not sure if it's an issue with HitFilm or what, but I rendered it and then it lost half of its frames
Oh
because it was on the
no.
wrong setting.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh,
So I'm
oh,
rendering it
oh man.
again. I started it at 10 p.m. last night and it's currently at 70%.
Oh my God bless you. Holy cow.
Yeah. So it's been going for about 14 hours now.
What a nightmare.
But thankfully, I'm able to do other things during
Mm,
it. So it hasn't
yeah,
completely put my computer on the fritz. But
yeah,
that's real, folks. Like when I edit the episodes for this show, it normally takes 4 or 5 hours to render,
yeah,
and then even just uploading to YouTube, it'll take 7 or 8 hours typically. So you have to give yourself a lot of leeway when it comes to that.
yeah.
Um, and with sound design, I remember seeing this video a while ago of this huge, crazy instrument for horror sound effects.
Mm,
Do you know what I'm talking about? Where like
yeah.
it had a ton of components, like it had these things that look like trash can lids, and I don't know. It was crazy, but it was like the quintessential end all be all of horror movie noises.
Yeah. It was called like the Nightmare Machine or something.
Yes,
And
something
yeah,
like that.
that was
Yeah,
cool.
that was very cool. So,
Hmm.
sound design, and as a person who's more audio focused, uh, that is very important. And if a film doesn't have the right sound in it, it can take you out of it can de-immerse you, if that's a word,
Yeah.
entirely if it doesn't have it properly.
Demers you.
Yes, we'll go with that. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning into the Gab Street Podcast. We're going to go ahead and hear a quick commercial break from Coop and Little Flea 614.
Coop checking in with y'all, man. Columbus, Ohio, stand up. OCMG repping it to the fullest, you know. Make sure y'all go download and stream my new album, 717, out now on all streaming platforms with my hit singles White Runts, Rumors, and Traffic. Yeah. This February 24th, we at XL Lounge in Columbus for Crowd Control. Shout out my brother Juice and Lonnie from 106.7. And 2 days later, February 26th, we performing in Athens, Ohio. On March 2nd, I'm going to be back at XL Lounge for another Crowd Control. Then later that week on March 7th, we'll be performing at Cloud City, courtesy of my boy Sam Rothstein. Finally, on March 14th, we start the tour at the Ballroom in Black Lick, Ohio. Hit 30 different cities and 15 different states all across the country. Tickets on sale now, so get yours ASAP before they sell out, because I promise you don't want to miss this. Shout out Gab Street Podcast for showing me love, man, and make sure y'all tune in on my interview with them coming out soon. Cool.
Hey there, Gab Street listeners. My name's Adam Himmel, and I'm the organizer for Little Flea in Old North. Our goal is to bring makers, artists, and neighbors together for an array of awesome events. We're looking forward to our next big flea market on April 26th at the Rambling House from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. We'll have a bunch of great local vendors for you to shop, craft sodas, and mimosas to drink. We hope you'll come hang out with us. You can be up to date on future events by following us at littleflea.614 on Instagram.
Okay, so I have a couple more things that I would like to address.
Yeah.
As a filmmaker and as a person, who are your role models?
I got two that I look up to very, very highly. I don't know if you one's a filmmaker and one's a graphic designer.
Okay.
So filmmaker is Olin Rogers. He was based out of Tennessee. When he was younger, he had a YouTube channel called Balloon Shop, and that was one of my biggest inspirations for even getting into filmmaking. It was funny, it was stupid, it was hilarious. I knew almost every word to every video.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was great. It was him and his two buddies. So it was Olin Rogers, and since then, you know, he's kind of gone on. He decided to not go the YouTuber route and stick with making videos for doing online content. And he decided he wanted to make films and make TV shows. And right now, he's on his second season of Final Space, that animated show on TBS.
Nice.
And I believe it's now. It was on TBS season 1, but I think season 2 is on Adult Swim. So yeah, he's been doing that. He still comes back to Tennessee. He has the tornadoes that blew through there, it was a couple of weeks ago, actually destroyed his shop, which was super sad because every time I went down to Tennessee, I'd go to his shop. Yeah, but it was, dude, it was the coolest place. It was a soda parlor. And so they would serve ice cream, soda. They had free arcade games. So it was like 16-bit down here in Columbus, and all of his merch. So he had a print shop as well. So he would make clothing and sell ice cream and soda, and have it all in this little soda parlor down in 5 Points out in Tennessee. So. Yeah, he's definitely one of my biggest role models. I met him once, and that was sweet. It was the coolest time ever. But he goes on tours nowadays. He does stand-up. Well, he doesn't say it's stand-up, but it is. He just tells stories about his life, and it's hilarious. He's a funny dude. And, yeah, he's definitely one of my biggest role models.
Like a spoken word kind of thing?
It's not written out jokes. It's really just him just talking about his life, and it's hilarious. You know, he does these story time videos on YouTube as well, and he'll incorporate those stories into his you know, or but yeah, I guess it's more of like a spoken word thing. But yeah, he's the top dog of role models in my book, and then my second one is Aaron James Draplin. I don't know if that name rings a bell.
It does
but
not.
Oh, he's the man. I really recommend checking out any of his stuff. He's a graphic designer. He lives out in Portland now. He grew up in Michigan, and he talks a lot about how he's a graphic designer. So not a lot of people. Graphic design is not really one of those things where people are like, man, like I'm just waiting for that new logo to drop. Like it's not like a, you know what I mean? He's not like a musician or any sort of, graphic designers tend to not get a big fan base, but he talks a lot about how he's made it big in the little leagues. So yeah, so and that's where he's at, and he's happy with it, and he lives a good life making graphic design and logos for people, and he's done some work for Bernie Sanders, which is sweet.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, for his campaign. And, yeah, he's just man. If there's anyone that's gonna get you really inspired to try new things and just, I don't know, pick up a pencil or download InDesign just to test it out, it's gonna be that dude. He also talks a lot about this whole Midwestern spirit, which I find very interesting. He talks about how, you've got like Michigan, you got Ohio, you got Pennsylvania, and they're all, in larger part, very industrial cities, and sort of the spirit behind these cities from a long time ago was, they built things to last. And so the idea was, putting everything that you have into something so that it does become timeless, and it doesn't, age with trends or anything like that, but just making something that people will appreciate throughout the ages. And, whether it's work boots that, your grandpa had when he was 20 years old and he still wears them because they still work. Or if it's a logo design that's stuck around with the company for years because it just works, So he's got a very interesting take on that, and I've kind of tried to adapt that into some of what I do with filmmaking. Just trying to make things timeless, and trying to make things that everyone will appreciate, and not kind of jump on trends, but just make things that I like and I feel like other people will like throughout the ages. I dig it.
Cool. Yeah. No, I think it's important to stay true to yourself in that way, not to follow just whatever everyone else is doing. So I'm sure it was tempting to follow what some other filmmakers might have been doing during the time. Unless, do you actually see what other people are doing during the 48 at all?
Right. Yeah. No. It's the 48 is definitely one of those things where it's. You have very little time to think, so you just gotta jump on the first thought and go with it.
Yeah, that's true. You don't have time to do anything else, really.
Yeah.
So one thing that you addressed in, first of all, you did Parliament Media Collective there for a little while.
Mm-hmm. And
I watched a video called Imposters here just a little bit ago. And Imposters goes into a topic that is pretty important to me, which is, broadly, it's mental health. But in that video, you address imposter syndrome. And how has that manifested in your life? Or at least explain what imposter syndrome is.
Yeah, so imposter syndrome is, this idea that sort of the more that you become a professional in what you're doing, or the better you become at whatever craft, there's a tendency to feel like you're not becoming a professional. Like the title of a professional doesn't stick with you. And when you're in the midst of who you also see as professionals, you almost feel like you're a fraud. Being in the presence of other professionals, even though that other people might see you as professional as well, like that title doesn't stick, and in your own mind, so you're left feeling like an imposter. And it's something that I've definitely felt in my life. I've been doing video for a very long time, and I did make Parliament Media Collective an LLC, and for a couple of years I was doing it as a business. But even throughout that time doing video work under my own LLC, I did not feel like a business owner. I didn't feel like a person worthy of the title of business owner or a professional video person, videographer. And that's something that I've tended to deal with quite a bit in my own life. So I wanted to make a video about that.
And it can definitely feel like if you begin to think of yourself as in that position of a professional, it can start to feel a little like you're too full of yourself, or self-gratifying. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, for sure.
And
yeah, it can go the other way around.
Sorry, what was that?
I said, yeah, it could go the other way around like that too, for sure.
And I think that's the part of it that I've dealt with personally, is I start to feel like I'm self-aggrandizing a little bit if I think of myself as cool at anything, you know what I mean? And I think a lot of people deal with that, but it's kind of like the reluctant leader is the best leader kind of idea. And I tend to think of it in that way, and sometimes that'll make me feel better about it. I totally agree. It 100%. Looks like, unless you would like to bring anything else up, that's all I have for today.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind talking about sort of the origins of Parliament Media Collective or Waves of Earth, or
sure, go right ahead.
So a couple years ago was when I wanted to turn my passion for filmmaking into a business, and I was playing around with a couple different names of what I wanted to call it, and my initial thought of how I wanted this business to go was it was almost like a kind of like co-hatch or something like that, where it was not necessarily an actual a name of a business that people would be employed under, but it was a business that people sort of, I guess, were freelancing under. So we all worked together. So it'd be filmmakers, it'd be graphic designers, it'd be photographers, all kind of working under this banner of Parliament Media Collective LLC. Something about me that some people know, a lot of people don't, but I love owls. They're my favorite animal ever. I got owls all over the place. I'm sitting in my study, and I have shelves of owl trinkets and knickknacks and all this. It's crazy. It looks like an antique store in here, but when looking up the definition of an owl, like a group of owls, there goes my dog. When looking up a group of owls is called a parliament.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and so a group of owls is not very common, but when they are together, it is called a parliament. And so the idea of making this company about uh, a bunch working independently together, much like an owl group, was going to be, a Parliament media collective. And that's where that name came from. And I was doing that for a couple years, and it really just kind of stayed me. I was just doing video work, and I was just doing promotional videos. I was doing wedding videos. I did a documentary, and I had some people helping out with it, but really it was just me. And what I wanted to take off in my head, it just wasn't happening. And due to some life circumstances, some speed bumps that kind of really set me back emotionally and mentally, I kind of took a step back from Parliament and said, I need a reset. I was still getting a bunch of inquiries about doing video work that really kind of wrecked me during my time of healing, and so I wanted to sort of disassociate my what I do with what I had been doing. So instead of continuing on my business with wedding video and with doing small business promotional video and all that, I decided that I just wanted to focus on short form narrative filmmaking. And so then it was just a matter of coming up with a name. And a couple years ago, I went to Asheville, North Carolina, with a buddy of mine, another one of my best friends, Roberto Escamilla. He is a barber here in Columbus. You should also go find him. And we were driving around the the mountains down in North Carolina, and I got this video of anytime you'd make a turn down on these roads in these valleys of green mountains, it was like you make one turn and one hill would come up and disappear, and you make another turn and another hill would come up, and you had these, it felt like these big waves coming down on you. And
I see where this is going.
Yeah, right. And so in my best moments, I tend to get a little poetic, and so I titled this video on my Instagram of these waves coming and going, waves of Earth, and then I just wrote, swallow me whole. I just wanted to kind of get so immersed in this environment that I was in, and that trip was very freeing for me. And so last year was when I decided that I wanted to completely rebrand from Parliament and focus on something that I would be, free to explore. And it wasn't until my wife and I were in Colorado, and we were up on the top of this 14,000-foot mountain, smoking some tobacco out of our pipes, and just
classic
just sitting in this big bank of snow all by ourselves on the top of this 14,000-foot mountain, that I decided that I wanted to title my next endeavor, Waves of Earth Films, because it was just sort of this stamp of freedom for me and what I was doing in this next journey of life. So
I have a lot of respect for the effort and the time you were willing to put into even just the name of something like that.
Yeah,
that's very cool.
Yeah, I mean, names are a big deal for me. Even the Parliament thing, it took a long time just to, figure that out. But yeah, names are a big deal for me.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great story. I love that.
Yeah, it was big moment for me. So it was good.
All right.
Yeah, man. Well, anything else you any other questions for me, or?
I think that's about all I have.
Yeah. Sweet, dude. This was fun.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for coming on the show this week. And thank you to everyone who listened this week. I know this is different, but we're still churning out interviews. We're still doing it every week. We aren't stopping. And as soon as Quarantainment is over, then we will go back to our regularly scheduled programming. But get on that mailing list if you aren't already, so you know who is going to be on the next 2 weeks. And we'll catch you next Wednesday morning. Thank you very much.